Are live. Welcome everyone. We're happy to have you here to join in on this panel. It's, cultivating resilience and preparing for fire season. Today we have a panel discussing spiritual health. My name is Jenny Harrow and I am the co-founder and executive director of Integrative Healers Action Network. We are a disaster response nonprofit that organizes integrative health and medicine practitioners to offer healing and trauma support services during a major disaster all throughout the state of California. This is the last panel in a series of 4 that we have been doing all throughout this month on sharing tools and resources to support your mental and physical health before and during a major wildfire, as well as some practical tools to prepare your home and community. We've planned these fire preps videos in August specifically because we thought it would be well before fire season, but 2020 has been a year full of many surprises. On August 15th, there was an unprecedented dry lightning storm throughout our state of California amidst a major heat wave, which has led to several fires igniting, more than 700 total actually throughout the state, which has now burned over 1.32 million acres, which, to set the context for that, is collectively larger than the state of Delaware. IHAN is based in Sonoma County, and here in Sonoma, Napa, Lake, and Yolo and Solano counties, we've been experiencing what's called the LNU Lightning Complex Fire, which has burned over 360,000 acres. In Sonoma County, the Walbridge Fire west of Healdsburg and in the hills of West County has burned just over 55,000 acres. And right now, the fire remains at around 19% containment. We have still a little more than 5,000 people evacuated in Sonoma County. More and more people are able to go home. We've been getting more reports, people being able to go back to their communities, but we're still navigating a lot of evacuations, and our neighbors to the south of us in Santa Cruz and San Mateo counties are navigating the CZU lightning complex wildfires, and tens of thousands of people are still evacuated there. So just to give an update of what IHAN is preparing and working on right now, we're still preparing to do in-person clinics for evacuees and first responders. Starting first in Sonoma and Santa Cruz counties and then leading to other parts of the state. There are extra complications due to COVID-19, so we invite you, our viewers, who are interested in getting involved either as a volunteer or a donor. Please visit our website at integrativehelersactionnetwork.org. We're accepting volunteers from around the country as we will be providing telehealth services and sharing more and more virtual resources due to COVID-19. And so it's a really great time to get involved if you're interested in helping support the trauma and physical and mental health challenges that evacuees and first responders experience during major wildfires like this. So before I introduce our panelists, I'd like to invite you, our viewers, to please share your questions with us, since we have some great resources available, some wonderful panelists. You can comment directly on this Facebook Live, and since this Facebook Live may be shared on multiple pages, you can also use Facebook Messenger to send us a direct message to ensure that we can see your question, and we'll share it with the panel by the end of the discussion. All right. So first, very excited to introduce you all to our first panelist, Alexis Kahlow. Alexis is the founder of Open Deltas, a company that helps get professionals out of the grind and into the flow through teaching performance-based mindfulness techniques. Hi, Alexis. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yay. All right. And our second panelist is Banyan Gallagher. Banyan wants to live in a world where people laugh more. As a yoga teacher, he synthesizes a lifetime of studies in competitive athletics, philosophy, circus performance, dance, theater, and yoga into moments of depth and joy. Thanks for being here, Banyan.
Thanks for having me, Jenny.
And next, excited to introduce you to Jonathan Bender. Jonathan has coached thousands to find their true voice and shine their light in the world. A public speaking and performance coach since 1996, he integrates spiritual tools and embodiment into self-expression to help you become a beneficial presence in the world. He holds dual degrees in performance studies, speech communication, and theater, and his clients are both professionals seeking public speaking skills, as well as those seeking to step out of reaction and into their essence. It's great to have you here. Thank you so much, Jonathan.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so wanted to start the conversation with just kind of getting all of your perspectives of, what spiritual health is. I don't know if this is a term that's being used widely, but as an organization that works with integrative health and medicine, we know that the connection between physical health and mental health and spiritual health are deeply interwoven. And so I'd love to hear from all of you. First, just what spiritual health means to you. And then from there, in your practice or classes or workshops, what are some common signs that someone's spiritual health is maybe blocked or could use some extra nourishment? Especially given the challenges of COVID-19 and the uprising of racial violence and everything that's happening with the wildfires. I know that you all may be working with people from around the state and the country and the world. So just curious to see what you've noticed in terms of spiritual health during challenging times. So Alexis, would love to start with you. Yeah, what the definition is for you and what you've noticed with your clients.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because my background is New York City, working in corporate sales, running sales teams, where I brought mindfulness into this very, very cutthroat environment. And so my clients tend to be type A professionals. I've got a lot of folks that are still on the East Coast, half that are on the West Coast, but most of which are working really, really intense jobs. And you would have thought with COVID-19 that for a lot of them, their life would slow down a little bit. But in fact, just working from home has allowed them to work more hours. And so what I've seen with, and what this means to me is when we're out of this, when we're out of alignment, right? And I think a lot of my clients, myself that I've seen, when we start to realize that things just don't feel in alignment anymore, that's when we know that we need to go back to some practices. And so what I see with my clients, there are three main kind of like, oh, something needs to change. And that's why they reach out to me for support or coaching or what have you. The first one, I call it the itch. It's like this irritable feeling, like this doesn't feel right. Like I'm just irritated a lot. And then that leads them to looking into other things, trying to fix, like scratch this itch. And then that leads them into what I call go only mode, which is really in that masculine energy of trying to do as much as possible. And this is where people become workaholics. They, make their calendar as busy as possible to either one, figure out how to scratch that itch, or two, to avoid feeling that itch. And then the last part is I see people when those two haven't worked, they start seeking all the answers from outside of themselves. And so rather than actually creating some quiet space to really ask themselves the tougher questions, like, am I really doing a job that fulfills me? Or am I in a place, in a home, in a relationship that feels really nourishing? They get really irritated, and they start asking everyone else for their opinion on what they should do, start reading books, Googling things rather than spending the time with themselves. So yeah, I think for me, it's that spiritual kind of wholeness is all about feeling in alignment. And when you don't feel in alignment, again, I see the main things being that itchy feeling, that irritated feeling, in go only mode, making yourself as busy as possible to kind of avoid that feeling, or to figure out what you can do in order to get out of that feeling. And then 3, people asking other people their opinion, even though they know the answer, is really to just sit with it and let it come from their intuition and inner voice.
I love that analogy of the itch of like, and yeah, the way that people want to leave, like kind of not dissociate, but like get out of their bodies a little bit and looking for external resources of like, I mean, we've all done that. Like, all right, I'm going to Google, like, how can I get through this really challenging time when like, yeah, sometimes just finding congruence in your internal self and like you said, just connecting to your intuition. I love that. Thank you. Jonathan, would love to hear from you next. Yeah, what is spiritual health to you, and what do you notice in your clients when that spiritual health may be out of balance a little bit?
I'll speak to both my clients as well as just what I see in general. And so for me, spiritual health is about connection, a holistic view of connection. And so like one of the core tenets of Buddhism is that when we are like disconnected from ourselves, when we're disconnected from others, from something greater than ourselves, then that is what's the root of what Buddhism calls the poisons, in terms of that's when we go into fighting and lack and dissociation and control, and that we're disconnected from other people, from source, however you define something greater than yourself. And that the path to that is to start to open back up like into a level of connection in terms of finding greater spiritual health. Uh, so in terms of the kind of the core work that I teach and how I frame it, whether I'm teaching in public speaking or otherwise, is we have to find connection. And so one is that cultivating that connection of, there are many practices for this, of connecting with something that is greater than ourselves, and to trust in that. However, something that people can fall into is they might find that, but they're still actually disconnected from other people, and they're not grounded into the earth. It's kind of like they can kind of be floating up here, but they're not grounded. And so cultivating that connection with the earth as well, and grounding who you are like into the material plane, is really an essential tenet of spiritual health. And also then that deep level of connection with other people. When we don't have that, when we are kind of sitting in trauma, and especially if we are in that freeze response, we're not connected, we're blocking that. And the same thing, we could be in fight response and fighting and arguing, which we see all the time on social media, and or just fleeing either part of it, not wanting to deal with it, or analyzing all these aspects of the trauma response. And so that spiritual health is cultivating that level of connection with others, to know that you are safe, and that sometimes we want to find safety first before we kind of step into connection. And it's actually the opposite, is we have to instead cultivate that connection to create a sense of safety for ourselves. And within that kind of spiritual health perspective, that it is integrative and holistic, it can't be separated from the other. It's how do we come connection with ourselves, with others, with spirit.
Yeah, I love that you brought up like our nervous system response to times of challenge, and how to navigate getting out of that fight or flight. Like, one of the responses of, that we can fall into is like the tend and befriend, that it's like, that's a great way to regulate our nervous system, is to connect with our friends, to connect with our community. And really grateful you brought up the connection with the earth as well. I mean, it's such a valuable resource and connection for us that, aside from all of the challenges that arise up, even with the smoke and the fires right now, like, I'm in my my studio, and I'm able to look out and see a tree outside my window, even within the parameters of my less smoky inside space. So thank you. Thanks for sharing all that. Banyan, would love to hear from you next. What is spiritual health for you, and what do you notice with clients or just in general during times of disruption with wildfires or COVID or other types of challenging experiences?
Well, I guess I'm already excited to hear from Jonathan and Alexis this idea that spiritual health or spirituality isn't necessarily tied into a particular belief system. I know that even just the word spiritual for where I grew up and kind of my background it's almost like a not quite a dirty word, but it's not a word we're comfortable with. Like in Chicago, I used to teach firefighters in Chicago, and you don't go to teach a yoga class for the fire department and talk about spirituality much. And at the same time, I think what probably everybody here has some connection to is that when the other systems feel integrated, kind of like what Jonathan was saying, when my physical body feels solid, when my sort of mental and emotional space feels solid, there seems to be something kind of something holding it together, some kind of a system of adhesion. And so to me, I think that's the start of trying to understand what spiritual health is. And I was thinking about how to define it. I think the best way I can think of it personally is the lack of resistance to what is. Just the complete lack of resistance to what's going on. And I think even trying to hold that out as a definition is also problematic, because we're face to face right now with a whole lot of genuinely well-placed fear and anxiety, right? From COVID, from the fire, whatever it is. So lack of resistance to me doesn't mean you lie down and let the wildfire come to you. It means that you recognize the truth of what it is, right? This is a potentially dangerous force and I need to react. So when I start with that acceptance, when I start with the lack of resistance, then I find myself in a place where I'm more likely to act and act well. So that's kind of a pretty root teaching of my background in yoga anyway, is finding the correct action, right? Finding the correct response. So as far as what it looks like when it's blocked, the best example I can come up with is I was just evacuated. My family was just evacuated a couple of days ago from the Walbridge fire, and thankfully, due to the hard work of all the responders, that fire seems to be more or less under control for the moment. So we're back home. Thank you. But most of my neighborhood left, and a few of my neighbors didn't leave. And I found myself thinking, okay, here's some resistance, right? Like the reality is the professionals are telling us, hey, it's time to get out of here and protect yourselves and make space for us to get our equipment in and so on. And some of my neighbors weren't comfortable leaving. They knew where they felt safe, which was home. And so they kind of gripped onto that. So to me, that's an example of maybe the spiritual health requiring some amount of nourishment or some amount of meeting there, right? More commonly, I think it looks like short, sharp, rapid breathing, right? High up, upper chest breathing. The resistance to accepting or to improvising or to acting, right? When we just freeze, whether it's from the itch that Alexis described or something else, right? We can kind of just get sort of locked up. So yeah, that's kind of, I think, what we're face to face with these days.
Yeah, thank you. No, I'm hearing the common theme between all three of you. It's like when spiritual health is out of balance, it's almost like, we're trying to find control in a very challenging or chaotic situation. And, it's being faced with the unknown, and although we're being faced with the unknown every day, aside from COVID and aside from the wildfires, but, with Alexis, what you're saying of like trying to work more, trying to find control in this. And so I really appreciate what you shared, Banyan, of like this, letting go, accepting it is as it is, and this like sense of surrender of like, we can't control all of it. And it's trusting, you know, like you said, trusting the first responders and the emergency professionals of like, this is the time to leave and to, you know, to maybe give some space to do some deeper work in this really challenging space. So thank you. Yeah, I would love to have some space for some demonstrations. You know, the theme of all four of these panels, you know, we've been talking a lot about cultivating resilience, and we hear the word resilience being used a lot in 2020 because of everything that has been unfolding. And so, you know, I'd love to hear from each of you. First, you know, what your definition of resilience is in the context of nourishing spiritual health, but also to give you some space for some, you know, out-of-pocket tools that either you use yourself or that you share with your clients when you're noticing that it's a time of great challenge, and in ways that we can strengthen our spiritual health and continue to cultivate and build resilience during challenging times. And so, Jonathan, would love to start with you. Just real quickly, your definition of what resilience means to you, and some practices or tools that you find are most beneficial.
So I see resilience as the ability to come back to yourself, but before you can do that, you have to know yourself. And so you have to know what you're coming back to. So so first is doing enough like practices and to be able to find that place of presence and centeredness. And then when the fit hits the shan, then you be able to have the tools to be able to come back there and to return to that place. So it's that twofold cultivation is how I view that. And so what I'd like to share is one of the most like fundamental tools that I use for when I am working with my clients or teaching groups. Now, I teach this also for just people who have like fear or nerves around public speaking, because usually when that happens, it's they're not in that place of centered and resilience. And that's like something a lot of people will deal with. A lot of people know that can be changed, but I also care as just as much of how we like show up in life and how do we get back there. So the tool is a centering and grounding practice that I'll do a little bit in short form. And so what I'd like to invite people to do, and you can do this if depending if you're in a public situation or private, like do whatever works for you to experience this. And the first is just like feel your body. And for this, you might just like loosen a little bit or like just feel your movement. But the main thing is that it's not just about like stretching, but that when we go into freeze response is that we kind of freeze up and we kind of just want to loosen that up. And if you do that, take some deep breaths. A great way to do that is actually to slouch, and you can lean back and slouch. And the reason why is that for a lot of people, when you breathe, most people don't know how to breathe diaphragmatically, a full body breath. And so they go, so if you just instead take some deep breaths, slouch, lean back, and just let it loose. And you might even take your arm and let it drop. And as you do that, I'll invite you, if you're comfortable, to close your eyes and let my voice guide you. And as you're taking some nice deep breaths, if you imagine that your body is like a vibrant redwood tree, like we're blessed with so many here in Northern California. And you can imagine that your torso is the trunk of the tree. It's healthy and vibrant, full of life. And that above you are the branches that reach up into the sky. And below you, you have your roots that go into the ground. And so if you visualize that as you feel the trunk of the tree in your torso, just imagine that you are starting to like grow those roots down further into the earth and connect with them. And I'll invite you to do that on the exhale, where you can take a full deep breath into your body and just send the roots farther down into the earth. And on that exhale, when you imagine growing the roots down into the earth, you can also visualize just like letting go of anything that doesn't serve you, any thoughts or sensations or feelings, memories. You can do this later as well, much slower. And then the exhale, just letting that release down out of your hands and feet as you just ground that energy into the earth as roots, and seeing it go all the way down to the center of the earth. And then begin to breathe up the healing and nurturing energy of the earth into your body. So in the exhale, letting go. And in the inhale, imagine breathing up that energy that starts to fill your body with vitality, with life, and letting yourself really rest into the earth and be supported. So as you feel your roots going down and the vitality of your trunk, you can also be aware that the branches reaching into the sky are also connected with something that is greater than yourself, however you term that. And you can feel that energy even begin to come down. And so you can feel this connection with both heaven and earth, with something greater than yourself, and with the supporting vitality of the earth that is always supporting you every day of your life. And to trust and to surrender anything that isn't needed, to ground and to open up into connection. And for very last moment, I invite you to imagine what it's like to open your heart a little more. And as you open your eyes, just imagine receiving and honoring those around you with appreciation that each person is doing their best, no matter how they show up.
Thank you. That was very nourishing after hectic morning and busy week, I know, for a lot of us. So thank you so much, Jonathan. I know that you have to go to your next meeting at 12:30, and so I'd really like to invite all of our viewers, if you have any questions for Jonathan, please share them in our chat or send them to us directly. We'll be in communication with Jonathan after the panel, and we'll be sure to get any of your questions answered. And if you'd like any more resources, then we'll be able to pass those along as well. So thank you so much for being here, Jonathan. Truly, truly grateful.
My pleasure. And on the last note, I'll mention that, as I mentioned, that resilience is a practice, is that this is a practice that if you do daily, more than once a day, just kind of imagine it for a moment. This helps cultivate and grow that center, as well as helps us go back there. And so it's a practice that I do every single day for sure, among others. And yeah, to know that no matter where you're at or how tough a time you're having, that this will hopefully be of assistance. So thank you for having me. And I'll try to tune in later to check for questions.
Yay. Bye. Right. Thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, I love that he brought up, that this is an ongoing practice, that cultivating resilience isn't something that we get to do once and we're good. It's like showing up every day, aside from all of the arising conditions, how can we continuously bring the tools and the practices that we learn and that resonate with you as, an individual? Like, that's what makes us all so unique, is that it's not a one size fits all approach. And so that's why we're so grateful to have our three panelists with us today to share a variety of tools and practices that, at home you can try on try on a few, see what fits, and then the one that feels really good, just keep at it, even if it's for a couple minutes a day. I think there's this myth out there that like, all right, I'm going to meditate and I need to do it for an hour and it has to be really hard. And it's like, start where you're at. Like a minute goes so far. And so, Alexis, would love to turn it over to you next. Would love to first hear what resilience is for you, and then to hear any tools or practices that you find are most beneficial during challenging times.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny. I'm so glad I get to go second after Jonathan. So for me, resilience is really about how quickly we can keep coming back to center. So that alignment, right? That alignment that we just talked about with our spiritual health. How do we keep coming back to center? And like you said, it isn't just COVID-19, right? Like I had a successful business prior to COVID-19 teaching people mindfulness practices, because everything throws us off or can throw us off. And so teaching how to get quicker and quicker back to that place of center, that place of alignment, and building almost that like self-regulation bicep curl, right, is so important for us, because it could be COVID, it could be the fires. And just think back to, your first love even. That was heartbreaking when it ended, and probably felt like the worst pain in the world. Or maybe, something with your boss, like feedback in a meeting didn't go so well. And that could feel just as devastating and crushing as some of these situations that we're confronted with right now. And so how do we build those tools to really keep coming back to center faster and faster? Or even when we become like Jedi ninja level, how do we stay center despite all of these things that are going on in the external? And so, for me and what I do with my clients is really look at the stress response. I created a workshop that was around this anxiety and stress response long before COVID, and then renamed it this spring called Corona Chaos to Calm. And one of the tools that we teach there is around this breathing technique. And it's very, very simple. It's something that you can do before a meeting, in between Zoom calls. Maybe your child is going absolutely crazy and you need to just take like a quick breather. And so for this practice, I'll walk you through it and then we can do it together. But it's just simply called U-shaped breathing. And what you do is you close your eyes, sit in a chair, shoulders on top of shoulder or on top of hips. And with your eyes closed, you're simply just going to bring the lips into a U shape, like you're saying you, and you'll breathe in through the U-shaped breath. Fill the belly, fill the chest, fill the throat until you can't breathe in anymore. Then you're going to seal the lips and slowly exhale out of the nose. And you want to naturally exhale out of the nose. When we do this, we stimulate the vagus nerve, which signals to the body to release that stress response and deregulate the nervous system. And so we're getting a real physiological slowdown, right? Or a shift in our body systems. And so we're not in that stress response, and we can look at what's in front of us and decide, is this something that really is worthy? Just like Banyan, you said, is this something, the truth of what it is? Is this something that really deserves a life-threatening kind of stress response? Or is this something that I can kind of sit with and I can take baby steps towards accepting what is in front of me? So let's all practice this together. We'll take 3 breaths. Before we do, just kind of notice how you feel right now. How about the jaw? Feeling anything in the jaw? If so, relax the jaw. Feeling anything in the shoulders? Relax the shoulders. Feeling anything in the hips? Relax the hips. So closing the eyes, placing the shoulders on top of the hips. Bring the lips into a U shape. And we'll start here, inhaling through the mouth with that U shape. Fill the belly. Fill the belly, fill the chest, fill the chest, fill the throat, fill the throat. Seal the lips when you've breathed in as much as you possibly can. And then slowly and naturally exhale out of the nose as you relax the shoulders down. Exhaling slowly all the air out of the body. And when you're ready, bringing the lips into a U shape. Inhaling through that U shape. Fill the belly, fill the belly, fill the chest, fill the chest, fill the throat, and close the lips when you breathe in as much as you possibly can. And slowly exhale out of the nose as you relax the shoulders, relax the jaw, removing the tongue away from the top teeth. And when you've exhaled all the breath, last one is you bring those lips into a U shape as you fill the belly, fill the belly, fill the chest, fill the chest, fill the throat, and then sealing the lips one last time and exhaling out of the nose slowly and naturally. And slowly opening the eyes, coming back into the space. Just checking in with the body here, how we feel, maybe before versus after. And taking note here of what it feels like to get out of that stress response. So that is the U-shaped breathing technique that I teach my clients. You can do one of these breaths, like I said, in the heat of a moment, or you can take 3 full ones in between a meeting, and just noticing the difference in how you're able to not only feel, but think when we've gotten out of that stress response, gotten back to center, back to alignment.
Oh, it felt so good. Yeah, thank you. I love how, simple that is, where it's like you said, like even if you're out in your day and, this is something that, yeah, it's great to do at home, but, I love the out-of-pocket practices where it's like, I think I've said this before, of like, even if, going into a bathroom where it's like things that we need to do anyway throughout the day. So if you're, been a first responder or a frontline worker throughout COVID or the fires, or, or like you said, like it doesn't have to be this major disaster to be experiencing high levels of stress, like things like the challenges of work or navigating relationships. I mean, being human has a myriad of experiences. And so I love this out-of-pocket tool of just taking a few moments to activate the vagus nerve. I'm so glad that you brought that up as well. I know that you have a meeting in about 5 minutes that you need to leave, but before you go, we've got a question from our viewers that that I'd love to pose to you first, Alexis, and then to you, Banyan. So we've got this question. It's, what is the best tool for acute help during a crisis like immediate overwhelm, where you have a problem even focusing? What can you do to bring yourself out of that? So it sounds like, just like the overwhelm, like can't even focus on, the tasks of what's in front of you for the day. What for both of you has been helpful just to get, out of the overwhelm and back into orientation and focus?
Should I go first?
Sure. Yeah, I know, since you have to boogie soon.
Okay. Sorry, Banyan. I want to hear your response too. I'll listen to this, I promise, this afternoon. So for me, it's first acknowledging what it is that is causing the overwhelm, causing the anxiety, causing the rumination, what have you. And maybe that's a few things, and maybe it's one big thing, but I like to acknowledge it and I write that down. My second step from there is, and this is actually a method that I use called the AAA method. My second step from there is determining with those stressors or the one thing, can I take action? Can I actually impact whatever is causing me stress right now? And in most cases, especially right now, there isn't so much we can impact, right? We can take calculated risks. We can wear our masks, we can do certain things, but at the end of the day, there isn't a whole lot more that we can do, even though it causes us a lot of anxiety. And so that moves me to my third step, which is learning the art of accepting. Right. And accepting is not resignation. It isn't, not having boundaries. It's not saying, I don't want this to happen, or making moves in order to not have something happen, but it's accepting that we only have the present, that we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And in some cases, it's also about understanding we only have a finite amount of energy too, and that we can't keep directing it towards things that we can't impact. And so that art of acceptance could be a process that you start, right? Like say, maybe there's grief involved, and grief is not something that you just immediately can fix, right? But it's starting that process. And in other cases, accepting is something that's pretty instant, right? It's going, oh wait, I have, a client who lost budget because of COVID, and I'm not going to email them one more time. I'm going to accept that this is the situation that is in front of me. And so, going through that process of acknowledging what's stressing me out, deciding, can I take action in this situation? And then if I can't, third, moving on to acceptance.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I love the layers of it, and acknowledging that. Yeah, sometimes it can be like quickly, all right, I accept this. And then the longer term, things like grief and that take time and space, and that are, you're pointed in the right direction, but it sometimes just takes that extra time and energy. But and I love that you mentioned journaling and like writing it down. Like there's something really powerful about getting our body, speech, and mind into congruence through writing. Like there's something that just helps integrate it all through the written word. So thank you.
Thank you. To jump off, but it was a pleasure and honor to be on the panel today. And to anyone who's watching who is going through a very stressful time, just know that there are resources and there is support. And gosh, I think this is just such a great time to come together as a collective and really move through things together in a way that we're supporting each other, that we grow our compassion muscle, that we learn the self-resilience, right? And moving back to center and alignment. And just wishing everyone big hugs and take care. Thank you, Jenny, for having me.
Thank you, Alexis. Bye. All right. So
I try to address this question as well. I have maybe just one thing to add.
Yeah, I would love that.
I got the sense from the question that that there are moments. I think probably for all of us, there are moments where it would be hard to even find a pen and paper to journal a kind of witnessing process of what's going on. There are moments where the word acute was used, I think. And so I guess I just wanted to zoom back, because I loved Alexis's response sort of as a longer term process, but in the short term, high anxiety, almost panic level, the yogis have a practice called Visamavriti, which basically means an imbalanced breath. And actually, Alexis taught, in a sense, a version of that in this U-shaped breathing. I would simplify it even more in those acute moments and suggest if you really can't focus even on what the problem is, you're just in such a high level of anxiety in that moment, for example, taking an inhale and an exhale, but making your exhale longer than that inhale is a pretty sort of tried and true tested practice for calming your nervous system in the moment. So what I do is I count. I count, maybe I inhale for 4 seconds and then I exhale for 6 seconds or even 8. The longer, the kind of higher the ratio between the exhale and the inhale, the more powerful it is. But every person just has a different relationship to their breath. So it's not important you push it very hard. Inhale for 4 seconds and try to slow down your exhale so that it takes you a little bit longer than 4 seconds. A lot of people find that that even after 3 or 4 breaths like that, there's some kind of a shift. Maybe that shift is just long enough. It's buying you enough time to go into the practices that Alexis is suggesting, for example. But in those kind of really acute moments, try to let something out more than you're taking in. Those kind of levels of fear and kind of high fight or flight moments is often a response to so much stimulus, so much information coming in. So we're just kind of using the breath as a vehicle to let go of something that we're not trying to grip onto. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for addressing the acute nature of the question as well. And I think that's what so many people are navigating right now is what to do in, like, if you do only have a moment, and to come out of that initial fight, flight, or freeze space, and the breath is such a powerful vehicle to do that. So thank you. Yeah, and would love to hear from you of what resilience means for you, and in your practice, what are some beneficial tools that people at home can try on and see if they fit. So yeah, I would love to hear from you.
Yeah, when I think of the word resilience, I guess this image of sort of steadiness or steadfastness, right? Like, and to me, that can manifest physically. It's sort of the opposite of somebody whose knee is always bouncing when you're having a conversation with them, right? And so you can kind of imagine someone sitting kind of regal and yogini-like, right, with the legs folded or something. But I think a sort of level more subcutaneous, a level deeper than that, maybe is the ability to hold your awareness in place, to kind of the ability to kind of keep your senses open and continue taking a certain amount of relevant information in without blocking out the world, which is personally, I mean, that's a kind of tendency I'm having these last few months, is I'm just like, man, I just want to retreat. I want to hide a little bit. And on those days when I'm feeling more resilient, I'm like, you know what, like I can be more present with my neighbors. I can be more present in my relationship. I can be more present even with my child, right? So kind of in the face of high stimulation, I think resilience is, the ability to stay present, to stay there, to stay with the people around you. The best tool I know of for that practice is meditation. And I know Jonathan mentioned it earlier as a kind of process that does require practice in order to kind of bear more fruits. And so I think it is worth, even if you don't have much of a meditation practice today, it's worth giving it a shot for just 2, 3, 4 minutes a day. And I think the kind of focus that I would encourage people to play with, there's a million different ways to meditate, but at the moment, I think, especially right at the beginning, and especially in a moment like this, try to resist the urge to use your meditation as a vehicle for withdrawing from the world, and instead consider that meditation can be an opportunity to actually connect with the world. And so that's, hearing the sound of the birds, or the ticking of the clock, or the rolling of the tires outside. Actually, an oak acorn just fell on my roof just now. Just so saying that. So yeah, meditation is sort of top of my list. Another really simple practice that I use is called Abhyanga. That's an oil massage. It's a self-massage. I know probably those of you who receive bodywork haven't received it for a long time due to COVID. The yogis, the Ayurvedic system has this self-massage basically that the yogis used to do, and still many of them do. And it's basically right before you take a shower, you bring some oil, coconut oil, sesame oil, olive oil, whatever you got, and you just rub your skin with it. It feels amazing, especially in a time when we're so yeah, we're so short on touch, right? We're so short on intimacy and connection physically with other people. So starting every day with your skin feeling a little warmer and softer and more hydrated is a great way to start. Um, Also, I mentioned this breathing pattern, making your exhale longer than your inhale, and from a physical practice, from a physical yoga practice, those of you who do yoga poses here and there, all of the standing poses are great. That kind of brings me back to what Jonathan was suggesting about feeling the kind of roots coming out of your feet. All the poses where you're standing with your feet connected to the floor, triangle pose or mountain pose or side angle poses, all those poses kind of encourage you to get a sense of what's stable and solid underneath you. So those are the poses I kind of prescribe in those moments too.
Yeah. Thank you. No,
Mhm.
I'm so glad that you brought up, meditation as a way to expand awareness as opposed to like going into some sort of trance or using it as a way to escape. I mean,
Mm.
there's space where we need to disconnect from the overwhelm and give ourselves space to relax and find refuge. But there is something so powerful of using the practice of meditation and breath work to be opening even more to our lives and to our environment around it, even when there are challenges. Like, I love that you brought up, you heard the acorn falling. Life is continuing
Mm.
to live even during the challenges.
Mhm.
I'm like, the birds in my yard were gone for a little bit when the smoke was really bad, and now they're back.
Yeah.
It's like putting out extra water and putting out extra food,
Yeah.
and just taking these moments to through our practice and through expanded awareness to find joy in it too.
Mhm.
um I've got another question coming in. What is your go-to practice that non-yogis can do? So for people who maybe don't have a lot of experience with yoga
Mm.
or meditation, even, like, I loved, your example of just elongating the exhale. Like, that's such a beautiful example. But any other practices
I'm
that are just your, like, back pocket?
I'm gonna say that same one again. And I guess yeah, we have lots of different tools in the toolbox, but I think the more consistent I think this message comes through for me anyway is the kind of most authentic way that I can do it. Inhale for 4 seconds, exhale for 6 or 8. You don't need a yoga practice. You don't need a spirituality. You don't need a religion. You don't need flexibility. You don't need a master's degree in Sanskrit. Um, we all breathe involuntarily all day long, and we all have some amount of reference to kind of making that process voluntary. And there are moments that take our breath away, and there are moments when we kind of realize, right? Every once in a while, we all do that. And I think lately we're all doing a lot of that, right? So there's a sort of involuntary expression of your body trying to find a balance of its nervous system. And when you make that conscious, when you bring some awareness to that and just say, okay, something changes just for a second. And I think those milliseconds are kind of, that's the level I'd like to encourage people to work with as they go forward, right? Then you can pick up a meditation practice, then you can pick up a physical practice maybe, but try to get an exhale out today.
Yeah, no, thank you. We have
Mm-hmm.
another follow-up question to that one, just especially relevant right now. What if the air quality is bad? How do we navigate breath work and,
Yeah.
and deep inhalations and exhalations with all the smoke in the air?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, there's a flaw to every system, isn't there? Okay. Well, okay. I'll try to stand my ground actually. Realizing that it's on steady ground. This particular pranayama, this particular version of breath moderation is exhale focused. You're actually not taking in any more inhale than you would in a normal cycle of your breath. In fact, you're taking in a little bit less. You're letting out more than you're taking in. In fact, I knew a yogi who had a party trick where he would come into the yoga studio, and he'd say, this was back when people used to smoke in bars. Remember those days? And he'd come into the studio like on a Monday or a Tuesday, and he'd say, I went to the bar last night. Who wants to see some of the smoke that was in the bar? And we'd say, what? And he'd go, and he would blow out a tiny, tiny little bit of smoke, right? And I mean, much to the joy of all the people, were like, "What? How did you do?" And to be fair, I think he had a little background in illusion and magic as well. But it was such a great trick, right? So so this kind of exhale focused breath that I've been talking about the last few minutes, it's not increasing the volume of particulate toxic matter going into your lungs. It's, in a sense, it's just getting you a little bit of extra air out. So there are lots of breath work that yogis use to bring in more energy and bring in more stimulation. This is not one of those. This is one that we prescribe to insomniacs, to people with high anxiety. And it could absolutely be done through an N95 mask. It could be done through a cloth COVID mask, right? It's not a really heating breath in any way. If anything, it's cooling.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. That is so helpful. I mean, I think that's been such a top concern for everyone right now is the air quality and the smoke. And so, yeah, that's so powerful. It's just like, it's more about the deep exhale. And I'll add a little bit, one of my teachers was just sharing earlier this week about, when the air quality is really bad with the smoke that, we don't want to be taking super deep, like what you're saying, like let's pull in a lot of air and a lot of energy right now. We don't want to pack in the particular matter into our lungs. And so his suggestion was also to visualize, and to have it be, instead of this deep breath, like really just using your imagination to feel the energy of the nourishment of the air coming in when the smoke can be kind of tricky.
Yeah.
So,
and that kind of brings us to that sort of spiritual focus of this particular panel, right? Because the more sort of visualizing, or the more you're seeing what's happening with your breath or your body versus actually doing it intensely with your breath or your body, I think the more actually people get a sense of their spirit being involved, or their something beyond the physical plane being involved in what they're doing. So yeah, I like that idea as well.
Thank you. Yeah, our minds are powerful, and our imagination, I've seen on social media, this last week, people posting images of rain falling and, being able to, like you said, to tune into something that's beyond what we're possibly experiencing in our physical reality right here, and tuning into something deeper. And like our whole panel has talked about, tuning into connection and, our collective energy. And just really, really grateful to have you here, especially knowing that, you're just getting back home from being evacuated yourself. And so thank you so much for taking the time to share and to share your tools and resources with our viewers. And just want to say to all of our viewers out there, thank you for participating and joining us today. These are indeed challenging times, but also feeling a lot of gratitude for our community, feeling a lot of gratitude for our first responders who are working so hard. Oh my goodness, so grateful. I read a report. We have over 15,000 firefighters navigating the fires around the state. We have people coming in from all over the country and all over the world right now. And so I just want to put out there that, if you haven't had a chance to view any of our other panels, you can find them on our website. It's integrativehealersactionnetwork.org. This panel today will be living there as well. So please share this with any friends or family or anyone in your community that could use some extra support. And if you're interested in getting involved with Integrative Healers Action Network, again, please visit our website. You can learn more about how to get involved. Like I said earlier in the panel, we are putting together some in-person integrative health clinics where we'll be able to deliver services and care to evacuees and to first responders. This looks like this is going to be a long response, but we're also putting together a lot of virtual content and creating some virtual telehealth clinics as well. And so if you live outside of California, we'd love to hear from you and to have your support as well. So thank you again, Banyan, and thank you to Alexis and Jonathan who were with us earlier, and wishing everyone out there to be safe and healthy and well, and we'll look forward to connecting more soon. All right, take care, everyone.